Welcome to the Growth Shift. I'm David Zylstra. Here's what I've learned after years in business. Every leader who's built something meaningful has a story, but the moment they had to shift, when failure forced innovation, when change became opportunity, when they chose growth over comfort. On this show, we dive into those pivotal moments, the setbacks that became breakthroughs, the strategic shifts that accelerated growth, and the frameworks that turn obstacles into opportunities. Because here's the truth. In a world where change is the only constant, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who've learned to shift strategically through it. So whether you're facing your own pivot point or just want to learn from someone who's been there, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today, joining us is Erick, Director at Benefit Sculptor, an innovative insurtech platform transforming the employee benefits industry. With over 20 years of experience in the benefits broker space, Erick has leveraged his deep insurance knowledge and programming skills to develop a data-driven approach that helps brokers make better decisions for their clients. Erick also serves on the board of the local Boys and Girls Club and is the legislative chair for his local NABIP chapter, showing his commitment to both his community and the insurance industry. Erick, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, you spent nearly 2 decades as a benefits broker before creating Benefit Sculptor. What initially led you to identify the need for a more data-driven approach in the employee benefit space?
Well, it was the experience of being a broker. What I did was I would represent small businesses throughout, mostly in Utah County and Salt Lake County. And the challenge that you have when you're trying to represent an employer's benefit program is helping them make decisions. And the challenge in making decisions is that the driver was Excel. We were using it in the companies that I worked at, all of the other agents that I know in the industry. Excel is kind of like the workhorse, and it's a good tool. There's nothing wrong with Excel. You know, I've kind of got a love-hate relationship with Excel. There are times where I still look at it and say it's the right tool for the job today, but Excel has limitations. And one of those limitations is that first off, it requires data entry. It keeps you busy and doing a lot of work. And because of that, it means that there's a bottleneck on your ability to prepare well for a presentation with an employer. Secondly, Excel is really good at laying out financial information, but it's not really good at telling a story, meaning giving an employer the ability to sit down and look at a document and say, oh, I get it. I see what's going on here, and I see why I should be making these decisions. And so as I was working in the insurance industry and then seeing technology that was kind of popping up everywhere else, you know, you'd see your clients, these employer clients, using inventory management systems, and they would be using payroll systems. All of them were leveraging business intelligence, a fancy word for technology that basically takes the Excel story and ups the ante a notch by giving you graphics and charts, graphs, data analytics, those kinds of things. What I wanted to do was bring that same experience down to benefit quoting. So that was really what led to the whole thing.
So as I recall from our first conversation the other day, you mentioned that, with how you use Excel, you were able to use it in some pretty incredible ways, which I think shows today with you still thinking that maybe this is the right solution for a current problem, right? Which led to you becoming the Excel guy with where you were working, right? But at the same time, it sounds like you were starting to realize that, hey, there's some really great technologies and platforms that other parts of the industry are using for what sounds like maybe similar problems, right? What was the moment that you realized that, the traditional spreadsheet approach that you were taking with Excel wasn't really serving benefits brokers in the same way? Was it like something that you recognized and it evolved over a period of time, or was there like an aha moment?
Yeah, well, it was this. I wouldn't say there was like an aha moment. I wish there was, but it was really just kind of this progression towards a central problem. And that problem was this: is the traditional quoting experience, especially back in these days. So if you need a frame of reference, This is 2005, 2006, somewhere thereabouts. That's when I was kind of deep in the trenches of doing this Excel-based quoting and consulting with employers. The challenge that you would have is in Utah, we had, at any given year, we had 5 or 6 insurance carriers at the time. So at this point in time, it's a little bit smaller. It's actually closer to 3. But we would have, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, and then sometimes like a Star Mark or someone like that. And then we have an 800-pound gorilla in Utah called Select Health. They're kind of the dominant insurer here. So you've got all these separate insurance companies, and you've got to go to them, and you've got to get their products and make some sort of decision about, okay, what is the right product? Well, the trap that a lot of brokers get into, and we were no exception, you try not to, is you get comfortable with a carrier or two, and it's usually that 800-pound gorilla that you get to know their products really, really well, and so they end up getting preferential treatment on the quoting because that's who you're used to. You know their products really well, and then once in a while, a carrier who's still a strong carrier but kind of flying under the radar a little bit, they'll start introducing some products that are actually pretty competitive and pretty strong, and it's not always apparent to you, and it's not always clear that you're serving your clients by overlooking some of these products, and in the moment they pop, it's not even clear to you. Usually what causes brokers, to just be frank, to start moving their business elsewhere or trying to adopt new strategies is about the point in time when they lose a group. So you've got some groups that you're representing, and you're kind of doing the same old thing. You're comfortable with it, and then some other broker comes in, brings in some other strategy, you lose a group, and then you go, okay, shoot, we better start taking this thing serious. And so now you go in and start doing that. Well, I didn't want that to happen to me. I didn't feel like that was me doing right, to always, coming to my clients and making changes only after I've gotten stung a bit. And so what I wanted was a tool that said, okay, the reality is to give you an idea, when you got 5 or 6 carriers, that's 300-ish products that you have to offer to your clients. Now that's back in 2005. Now today we've got level funding, which adds another entirely wide range of options. Benefit Sculptor supports that. I always need to say that, so that's my one little plug. And then ICRA is a new frontier today too. So the amount of just the volume of choices you have to make is huge. And so what was going on at the time, and I'm not going to give you a huge backstory, but one little advantage I had going for me at that point in time is I did life in reverse. I got a sort of career-oriented job, and then I decided, you know what, I probably better go to college. And so I was going to college when I was 28 years old and working full-time as a benefits broker, and I got a degree in economics. And what that did was I was looking at this stuff I was studying in school, and I was, being forced into some mild computer programming through that, some basic statistical computing and those kinds of things. What happened is I'm doing this real life work, and then I'm doing this academic work in school, and I'm seeing these tools and these solutions and saying, wow, you know what, if I could bring this stuff over to the benefits industry, that would be really, really powerful, because what I can do with some of this statistical computing stuff is miles ahead of what I can do with Excel. And so I started doing that, and it started enabling me to automate some things internally and everything else. I was able to become better. I was able to develop kind of, if you will, proprietary consulting patterns, things that, I wasn't trademarking anything, but it was just, these were things that I could really say, I'm actually doing something unique now, as opposed to doing what every other broker. And my clients were liking it. We were getting good feedback from the clients saying, hey, nobody's ever shown me the 30,000 foot view and then brought it down to the street level to say, okay, now I understand why you're recommending what you're recommending to me to. Now, so where I was at that point in time and where Benefit Sculptor came about was I said, okay, cool, I need to take this out to the world then and make this a product. And what I didn't know at the time is I could write a little bit of code, I could do math and stuff like that. That threw me into the world of web development, because the ability to build some, what we would call back-end technologies that serve me and allow me to do my job is great. Now packaging that as a product that I can give to other people, well, that requires you to slap a web page on top of it, and that's a very complicated thing that, if somebody had told me what I was getting into when I got into it, I don't know if I would have. But I thought, well, how hard can it be? Which is the story of my life. Yeah. So I jumped into it, and that's that's been sort of the story of Benefit Sculptor from there is figuring out how to take
Okay.
those
All right.
analytical things and package them in a website.
Right. So it sounds like where you started was from a point of pain yourself, realizing that the landscape is huge. How can I possibly provide my clients with what they actually need and not be putting myself in a position where I'm only offering what I know because there's too many options to fully understand, right? You went to college, you got some new capabilities, some new technical skills, and you realized with those, you could actually provide your clients with a full 30,000 view overlook of this massive landscape. So you started to develop a prototype or a product that was serving you initially, but you thought, hey, this could be really good for some other people, right? Now, you told me when we spoke initially that this is a prototype that you started to bring to people thinking that, hey, this could just be a really good product that they could use themselves, a really good tool. But, maybe the approach you thought you were going to take wasn't really the right one. Can you tell us a little bit more about
Yeah.
how those initial stages of listening to feedback from your customers really shaped the direction that you took?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the initial time that we started doing this, it was at the point in time where I had a fully fleshed out prototype, if you will. That was about 2016, and we were right off the heels of Zenefits. And so, for those in the benefits space, Zenefits was this company that kind of popped up overnight, and in about 4 years went to being about a $4 billion company, grabbing up benefits accounts left and right. Now they had a ramp up and a ramp down. They had kind of a strange trajectory, and most people know about that. And if you don't, you can read about that. But what it did was it kind of opened this possibility. Well, maybe there's a direct to employer approach. Maybe employers would appreciate this stuff and want to see this information. And so I initially built a prototype around that, where employers would be able to use it, and learned very quickly that that was not going to work. And so the experience I had was we tried it with some local customers. We tried it with a few people throughout the country. And one employer in particular was the one that kind of just solidified it for me, because customer feedback is a hard thing. Most of the time when you're getting feedback, you're not getting honest feedback, and so those few times where you get real honest feedback, you learn a lot, and you need to really capitalize on that. And so what had happened was I brought this product in, and I'm showing this employer everything it did, and I was sort of explaining how what everything meant, the benefit meanings and stuff like that of all the stuff I was showing him, and got to that point of, what do you think? And he said, he just kind of looked at me. He says, well, Erick, he says, I think it's awesome. He goes, I love what you have here. But then he stuck his finger right in my face, and he goes, but I love it when you use it. He goes, I don't want to use this. He goes, I would love for you to come into my office and use it and do exactly what you're doing right here. But if you're telling me that I've got to have a login and a password, and I got to give employees logins and passwords, and we got to manage all this stuff, and then I'm supposed to sit here and play around, I'm not going to do it. And so that was kind of just the eye-opening point for me that says, okay, this absolutely has to be a broker tool. There's no way around that. Employers do not want one more, especially small businesses that are always being given, hey, check out this really easy thing. You'll manage your whole business here. And it's never as easy as anybody says. And, they've already been burned by those experiences. They don't want one more login and password. So that was, if there is a defining moment in Benefit Sculptor, that's one of them.
So this was the beginning of Benefit Sculptor, Erick, right? You envisioned a tool that was going to be extremely beneficial for employers, but there was a little bit of a disconnect, right? They didn't necessarily want to use this themselves, so you realized that this is a tool that's meant for brokers, right? But even as the tool it is today, you describe it in a way that perhaps many people don't initially see it as, right? You describe it as a business intelligence platform rather than just a quoting tool, which is, I think, maybe what it generally gets bundled in with. Can you describe how this difference impacts the quality of decision making for brokers and their clients?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's kind of two trajectories on that. One is what is it, and then the other is how do we describe it and how do we talk about it. Finding the appropriate language has been a challenge. So I used to call it a business intelligence solution. Today I call it a quoting platform, and the reason is because if I call it a quoting platform, I have the ability to have a conversation with a broker. If I call it business intelligence, they go, oh, that's really cool, see ya, and they don't have a clue what I'm talking about, and so.
Yeah.
So the language you choose matters. But when you have the opportunity, well, what is business intelligence? We live in a data world, right? And we love talking about data. We've got data for this, we've got data for that, and we can solve any problem with data. Well, data is a very important component to the innovations that happen in the world today, but it's about half at any good day. It's about half of the innovation. Developing streams of data. Data in my world, and kind of the analogy I use, it's fuel in the Industrial Revolution. Data is the thing that makes things go around, but fuel by itself is raw and it's crude. And it needs to be processed and it needs to be transformed. And that's where data is. Business intelligence is that processing component that happens to data when you take data and you turn it into, and I'm doing air quotes because these are terms that we hear a lot but we never really think about anymore, especially if you're not in the data industries, which is it gives you insights. What does insight mean? It means, well, I've got a lot of data here, right? And I need to find a way to turn this data into meaning, something that I can say, okay, now I've got this information, and how do I take it and help me figure out simple questions like which insurance product is best? Which insurance product is cheapest? Which insurance product is going to provide the best coverage for my employees? I mean, there's a number of trajectories we can come at a question from, but insights are the tools that we would use to be able to answer those questions from data. And it's always taking data and distilling it down to some sort of either a metric or some sort of a chart or a visual. Something that's going to say, okay, a metric would be an example of very simple terms. What's the average cost? What's the minimum cost? Those are simple metrics that are everyday that anybody understands. What's the average cost of a plan in this category? What's the minimum cost of a plan in this category? What's the maximum cost of a plan in this category? What is the out-of-pocket expectation to an employee in this category? And then, or a visual. So, for example, our main visual, if we have one visual that kind of separates them all, is we took just all of the health insurance options and we laid them out on a scatter plot. So if scatter plot's a term that you're not familiar with, it's those two-dimensional grids that you've seen in math class where you've got little dots scattered across the map, and each dot in our world represents a health insurance product, and each axis or each kind of point or I'm just going to call it axis, so you can look it up if you don't know what that means. On the grid it's vertical is always cost, and then horizontally we can manipulate that. That could be deductibles, that could be actuarial value, which is a metric that I really like, but you can use out-of-pocket maximums, and it orients the entire map of products so that you're not just getting a visual of, okay, where does this product sit and how does it compare, but what does the entire market look like? So that when I'm sitting down with an employer, sometimes you've got to deliver bad news, right? What does the employer want? Well, I want the cheapest insurance that makes my employees the happiest. And those two things are always working against each other. And so the job of a broker oftentimes is to sit down with an employer and commiserate with them just a little bit and say, yeah, the state of the industry sucks. I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah. Now let's get real. Let's decide what decisions we're going to make. And if you're looking at me and saying, man, I just really don't like where things are, well, we can manipulate the data so the employer can get that entire market view so that they can kind of know, okay, what are my boundaries actually? Do I want out-of-pocket maximums that are down to $2,000 for a family? Well, in small group, that's not very realistic. It's not just, did I not bring you the right quotes? It's those quotes aren't out there. There's a few products that'll do that, but you've got narrow choices there. And I'm not here to tell you whether one choice is better than the other, but what I am here to do is provide you with the tools that will allow you to see it and understand the implications of the decision you're making. And the value, I guess, to be tiny bit sales pitchy is that if you give the information to the employer this way, and that's the critical thing for everybody to understand, is that the challenge of being a benefits broker is this industry inside and out. I know what's going on in the market, but I got to find a way to communicate this information to a guy who builds cabinets for a living. It's not that he's dumb. It's not that he doesn't get it. It's that he's got other things that he's worried about all day long. Are we getting our lumber supply in? Do I have enough employees that are going to be able to take care of these jobs? Those are the things that he's concerned about. So you've got a short window to educate him or her on the state of the benefit decision they have to make, and then help them optimize that decision making. And that's what Benefit Sculptor does. Is it takes the broker, gives them a tool that they can tell a story from that's backed by data, and that will allow the employer to be confident about the decision. I don't say happy anymore, because find me a person that's happy about their benefits decision, right? But at the very least, if you're optimized about it, then you're able to get business done and keep going.
Okay, so it sounds like it's almost like you're taking a different language, which is data, and translating it for employers so that they can understand it in their own terms and see the true value behind it. Now, you mentioned that, how you might describe Benefit Sculptor is as a business intelligent platform, but you had to change the wording approach around that to have it resonate with brokers because who wants to use a business intelligence platform? Alternatively, an extremely useful or intelligent quoting platform resonates a little bit differently, right? Now, with what you're mentioning and how the data is collected and utilized, is this all happening behind the scenes with the algorithms, with the programming, or does the broker have to do any more work on their end to really utilize it in this way?
We've worked really hard to minimize the amount of data that the broker has to supply. There are certain, so at a technical level, ACA plans, so all of the standard fully insured plans, we have those, we provide that data. Brokers do not need to provide that. So we have that. If you're talking about level funding, we support level funding, but level funding is still kind of a wild west. There's not a place where you can go and just get a list of every single product that's out there in a nice, clean, data malleable way, meaning you can just extract it and put it into databases. So what we have built for that is we have a tool where brokers can build a library that allows them to still minimize the amount of data entry, so they don't have to go in and create all of their products every single time. They create them one time and then they can assign rates. So we built it with the broker in mind, and one of the goals that we built was to minimize data entry. That's actually stated in our development literature. Data entry at a minimum. So we've built it around that. The data that a broker always has to provide is the census of employees and dependents. So they'll provide that. Our system takes that data, marries it up with the data that we already have, and then it produces insights and outputs.
Okay. And is this any more work that a broker might have to do with another quoting platform that they might be considering using? Is it a little bit more? Is it the same amount?
No, it's going to. I would very comfortably say that you're doing whatever quoting engines are out there that have you doing, if we said that my next closest competitor, we're doing no more work than they are. So we're not kind of middle of the road with that. You do is, there are certain things that nobody's been able to crack, right? I mean, in a perfect world, all quoting engines it would be nice if you could just hit a button and somehow all of the employee data were in there. Nobody's figured out how to crack that problem yet without owning payroll or something like that. But we're at the lowest benchmark as the best companies are out there. We're not beating them because we're all basically facing the same problems at that point in time.
Okay, so it sounds like the approach that you take and the platform itself is extremely intelligent and provides an immense amount of value to brokers as well as to employers, right? Maybe not many of your competitors are taking a similar approach or being able to provide similar results, let's say. There is a lot of competition though. So if upfront the platform seems similar to brokers, it requires the same amount of work, it yields maybe a arguably similar output. What sort of objections or challenges are you facing with communicating this value or introducing the platform to new potential broker partners?
Well, yeah, that's the easiest one. We really shifted the renewal and quoting conversation. Right. What most of the systems out there are doing is they're basically automating the same old process. So that Excel sheet generation, that tabular layout of plans side by side, everybody has basically built an automation tool for that. Some are using what we would call OCR technology, and that's a fancy way of saying AI tools that can read a PDF. So you go get your quotes from your different insurance carriers and you just upload them to your system, and then an OCR technology will come in and extract the relevant information. I mean, it's really cool technology. I don't want to sound in any way like I'm critical of it. It's cool technology. As a tech lover and as a code writer, I love that technology. It's fantastic. The goal is to basically to extract data from these reports that you're given from different insurers and then convert them to Excel spreadsheets, basically, or presentations. And any other competitor, ones that are using kind of databases like what I'm doing, what they'll do is they'll take those databases and how do we build a spreadsheet? What I did is I looked at it and said, you know what? Our problem isn't we don't know how to build a fast enough spreadsheet. Our problem is that we don't know how to tell a good data story. And so what I'm doing is I'm coming to brokers and saying, hey, you don't need to use that spreadsheet the same way that you're used to. Let me show you this different layout. And it's in many ways it's so different that it's required a lot of kind of introducing the product to them over and over again for them to kind of look at it and say, oh, okay, I'm starting to get this now. We live in a funny world that is excited about technology, but for some reason has this aversion to math, and which is kind of a funny thing that you encounter. So you bring it in and say, "Oh, that looks too mathy to me." It's like, well, you realize benefits are a math problem, right? I mean, it's a math problem. So if you can't be intimidated by math, but we're not doing calculus here. You don't need to go to college to understand this stuff. You can be a high school student and understand benefit sculptor. But yeah, we use math. And so that just the initial visual of a scatter plot. Bar charts people don't have a problem with, but scatter plots, they're not the most advanced graph. I mean, there are even more advanced graphs that we've chosen not to use because it's like, look, if the scatter plot's too deep, then we definitely can't move into web charts and 3D modeling and those kinds of things. So those have been the biggest challenges. Is that it's more than a 10% shift from what the customer is used to doing.
Yeah, and any change is difficult to convince people to adopt, regardless of what it is. Maybe a business owner or leader might be open-minded to it, but getting all of their team to adapt it and to jump into it can be pretty challenging too. So a 10% change is enormous, whether it's advantageous or not. Now, Eric, I do want to ask you about AI, but I have two more questions for you before that to sort of tie some of these things together and really show the audience where it is they can start leveraging AI and perhaps get some inspiration from you with that as well. The two questions I have for you are firstly, you have an incredibly valuable platform, right? And an amazing value proposition, but ultimately it doesn't matter how good a product or service is if you can't effectively connect it with the people who it's meant for. Right now, you know how to demonstrate that value, but how is it you're going about really successfully getting this out to the population? What's your approach for standing out from the competition when it comes to marketing or advertising or actually connecting with the people who this is meant for?
Well, the couple of answers to that question. So one is finding people who get it and people who can kind of really appreciate it. And when we found them, we've got some customers who, the ones who use it, love it. And you don't want to ever do this, especially not as a business owner, because that's a nice way to get yourself either sounding stupid or being stupid, and both are bad. But we found some customers who really like it, and getting them to help tell the story and talk to the brokers they know in their area is really critical. So they can say, look, this is what Benefit Sculptor actually helps me do. Here's why I like communicating this information. Here's what my employers are telling me. Those are kind of at the grassroots level probably the most important things. The other thing is that we have to kind of as a company be a little bit more humble and say, okay, well, great, we wanted to really revolutionize or innovate on benefits quoting, but if we've gone more than 10% and people need a return to the Excel spreadsheet, well, then you have to do that. And so we're developing. We've always been able to download Excel spreadsheets. That's never been a problem. The problem is everybody wants their spreadsheet. I want a tool that basically will take our company's proprietary spreadsheet and help us build that. And this kind of segues. I'll let you kind of decide how the conversation goes. But we're using AI to help us actually develop that. So right now we're going to be introducing. We're just about done with our initial prototype of it. We'll be releasing here in the next week or two. Kind of a custom Excel spreadsheet builder that gets the broker out of data entry. It will tack right. It's not replacing Benefit Sculptor. It lives right inside of it. So all of the charting and graphing that you're used to getting will still be there. But then you can say, well, I'm ready to download my report, and you've got some flexibility to sort of customize your Excel report in a way that you haven't been able to do before, and really nobody has been able to do. And that's required us to solve some big problems, complex thing. How do I eliminate data entry? How do I basically have Excel data injection that's dynamic and gives you the same flexibility without data entry to create these things the way that you want them to be created? That's what we're embarking on right now, and we're about done with our initial version of that. And that's all been AI assisted all the way through. Developing that has been a collaboration with AI. So that's the second answer to your question. Is one of the ways we have to do that. Well, we have to go back a few steps and we have to meet the brokers brokers where they're at.
Okay, I see. So maybe to summarize that for the audience, really just focusing on how can you provide your clients with the most value so that when they're working with you, they want to shout from mountaintops, Benefit Sculptor is amazing. You should use it too. And just committing to that, the long game of providing value, being undeniable, and knowing that with that, more people will find you or more people will be open-minded when they start hearing about you because, hey, maybe they heard someone else is using it as well.
Yep.
Amazing. So, with that being said, it sounds like you've already answered part of my next question as well, developing new products that people are looking for and releasing those to make sure that you're always providing value. But looking forwards at your business over the next 6 to 12 months or so, what are your primary growth goals for Benefit Sculptor? Is it focusing internally on how can we provide more value, or is it, expansion into other areas or, a little bit further outside of Utah?
So the answer to your question is growth and depth. So we currently have the ability to do fully insured quoting for small business. We have the ability to do level funding quoting for small business. ICRA is kind of the new frontier in this space. And so ICRA at a high level is an arrangement, stands for individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement, and it's a scenario where an employer says, hey, I'm not going to sponsor a group medical plan anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a reimbursement plan for the employees to go out into the market themselves and buy their own coverage. And so that's becoming very popular. Many employers are taking that on, and that the numbers for that are pretty optimistic. A lot of companies kind of popping up right now to serve the administration of that. So we're building quoting solutions for that. We've developed something that I'm really kind of excited to showcase here in about the next 2 months. We've already developed the prototype for that. We've done some light testing, and so we're gonna be integrating that. But it requires a new way of thinking, and so that's part of the challenge is that we're kind of dealing with that. Well, they're used to using the spreadsheet approach. This is a completely different animal. You're not quoting products anymore. You're quoting cost, really, and how do I reimburse my employees and provide them with something that I can be sure is going to be competitive. That's a completely different challenge, and we've come up with something that I'm really excited about, really kind of excited to show. So rolling that out will probably be the next big step. And then, I've learned the hard way of trying not to get involved in what we call future engineering, which means you have an idea and then your idea just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it'd be cool if it did this and it'd be cool if it did that, and doing too much all at once. And so really over the next course of the year, we're going to kind of slowly, crawl, walk, run into that. We're going to roll out the very basic platform for that, try and get more feedback on it, and then iterate slowly, borrowing some of the ideas that we thought were good ideas and that seemed promising based on customer feedback, maybe developing some new ideas, etc. That's really the long-term next year of Benefit Sculptor. We've got some possibilities for, and I say possibilities, we've got ancillary coverage is something that we don't support and would love to support. We've sort of got some models for that as well, which is dental insurance, life insurance, kind of the whole benefits package. Currently, we don't support that, and so being able to do that is something that we hope to be able to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Eric, I'd love to touch on AI a little bit more to really tie some of
Yeah.
these things together because I think when a lot of people think about AI, they think about, ChatGPT and Anthropic, Claude, and all of these different things, Gemini, whatever it is. And they think about tools, right? Or they think about big companies who are creating AI voice agents and all of these things. And that's what AI is to a lot of people. And, perhaps from an outsider's perspective, looking at Benefit Sculptor, what they see is a traditional business, one that you have built before this, the rollout of AI, classic coding, a classic approach to solving business problems. But I also understand you're starting to use AI within Benefit Sculptor. So for a more, let's say, outside view of a traditional business such as yours, maybe not too traditional, you're using a lot of coding and programming and all of these things, where is AI going to play a role for you moving forwards?
Well, AI really, there's two places, or three, I guess I could say. One place where AI really shines is in any kind of dynamic user experience. An example would be going back to these spreadsheets. One of the things that AI gives us the ability to do, and we're actually building this into our current iteration of this new spreadsheeting approach, is the ability to actually use AI to format a spreadsheet to help you say, okay, how can I lay this information out? As a programmer, one of the things that I know that AI is very good at that the average person doesn't. Most people are using AI for, hey, I need to put a LinkedIn post together. Can you help me write this? And it's doing a lot of kind of that creative conceptual work. But it is really powerful for programming and coding. AI is very good at that. And one of the places where it works really well, that's kind of just an underutilized feature, is it's really good at Excel formulas. And so if, the number of brokers who I've worked with that are not very comfortable with math, for example. And I don't say that in any kind of critical way, but there's a lot of it out there. They're like, hey, I don't really get this. How do I calculate a renewal percentage? Or I've been asked those questions more than most people might realize. Well, we can use AI to help you figure that out, but not just answer the question kind of generically, but can you help me calculate the difference as a matter of percent between these two columns? We can build that in, and so those services are going to be supported by our directly. So that's one place where the consumer will directly interact with AI. The second place where we're using it is we're using it to help actually develop the coding. Now, to be clear on that, we're not at a place at all where AI is capable of, you just say, hey, can you go out, hypothetically talking to your AI agent, whatever, ChatGPT, Claude, whoever, DeepSeek, where you can say, hey, can you go out and build me a web page that does this? We're not at a place where you can just kind of offload an assignment and then go and drink your Coke and then come back and have a nice website built. But if you're a developer using AI to assist you in real time, hey, I'm working with AI right now I need to write a piece of code that will upload data into my database, or that will pull some data out of my database, or whatever. Or I want to do something data analytics, something that a lot of people may not be aware of. A lot of programmers are not data people. They're programmers, they're web designers. And so there's a kind of a strong crossover. So programmers that don't have a strong math background can use AI to help them develop analytic tools in code. So that's a place where we're using it. But the place where I think the AI has the strongest kind of broad market value, not just to programmers and not just technical people, is going to be AI collaboration in design of any kind of a business strategy, business process, or whatever. So I've got a ChatGPT terminal pretty much open all day long on my computer, and about every problem that I'm dealing with at some level or another, I'm sitting down and I'm working with it. Now, what I'm not doing is this. I'm not saying, hey, ChatGPT, will you build me X? Will you do? What I'll do is I'll talk to it like it's a tutor, like it's a collaborator. So I'll say, hi, ChatGPT, here's the problem I'm dealing with. I have got an employer, and I'll give you a classic example of a problem. I've got an employer that is switching from composite rating, which is where you set your rates for your premiums based on, single, employee, spouse, employee, children, and family. I'm going from that kind of a pricing structure to an age-rated structure where we take every member of the family and they have a price based upon their own individual age. And we take every member and we find their age and their price and we add it all up. I'm moving from this pricing model to this pricing model for whatever reason. And we need an employer contribution method that stays equitable across this entire system, but is accommodating to the fact that we've completely changed our rating calculation and it's throwing everything off. I need some help thinking through how would we solve this problem? How would we come up with a contribution method that would solve our problem, be equitable, be about in the same range as what employees are used to paying right now, and solve our problems. Now, You'll get into a long conversation with ChatGPT about this. It'll propose some ideas. You're going to test them out. You're going to try and, okay, well, it's suggesting I do this. Maybe it's caused me to think about something that I didn't think of. Hopefully I'm painting a picture of, that's where I think the real value for most of us, that's true of the technical user, that's true of the non-technical user, to work with ChatGPT. And I'll give you one more example. If I were writing an article today, what I would not do is I would not say, ChatGPT, I'm writing an article today on ICRAs, and I'd like you to help me write the article. Can you help me come up with an opener? Okay, now can you help me come up with a middle? What I'd like to say is, what I would do if it were me, I'd say, so ChatGPT, I'm going to write this article on ICRAs, and I would like to talk with you about it. Here's kind of my opinion about ICRAs, and here's where I think they're strong, here's where I think they're weak, and I want you to talk with me about that, and I'll just tell it even, don't be agreeable just to be agreeable. Argue where you see it makes sense, agree where you think it makes sense, and let's try and flesh out what our actual thoughts and beliefs are about this thing, and then once I know that, writing an article is pretty easy. But that will help you produce quality. Anyways, I could belabor it, but those are the kinds of ways that I think people should be thinking about ChatGPT and AI right now.
That's incredible, right? Because this is a very insightful and practical approach for people to take to really understand how can I use this better? Because I think most people who don't have much experience with AI and ChatGPT prompts and how to really extract the right information fall into the trap of just using it like a search engine, right? And if you're using it like that, you're not going to really get the quality output. Now, Eric, I know as well that you view AI as a very powerful tool and collaborator, but let's say it won't be the be all and know all when it comes to providing solutions or solving
Hmm.
problems for people. Now, you have a very bullish outlook on AI and you know it's very beneficial, but it seems like maybe there's some perhaps skepticism there as well as to how valuable is this in depending on the form that it's in or how it's used. What are your general thoughts for how it's going to impact the insurance industry as a whole moving forwards?
Well, I'm totally bullish on AI. I don't, I'm not one of those people that gets caught up in the science fiction of things. I know I've got the UFO poster on the background here, and that's all fun stuff to me. But that's not the world I live in. I'm not worried. Is AI going to replace jobs? My first answer to that is always the same thing. Well, unless AI can replace the consumer, the answer is no, because if it puts all the workers out of business, then who are the businesses going to be selling to if nobody has a job and nobody has any money? So there's that problem right away. I don't think AI is going to put people out of work. Will it change work? Absolutely. Is it going to replace certain jobs? Absolutely, it's going to. It's already doing that, and it's going to do that at a very fast pace. Problem that I think we all as a country face, really as a world, face with AI is believing that it's the easy button to a lot of our problems. What it really is it's an amplifier. And so if our belief is that we can sublet our thinking, it's one thing to say, look, I want to automate a few tasks. I don't want to, there are certain tasks that really don't require much thinking to do, and I want to automate those. Sure, let's automate the crap out of that stuff. But as far as can I get AI to do my thinking for me? No, you're really not going to get it to do that. And what it's really designed to do is it's designed to amplify you. It's not designed to be some sort of higher, philosopher or anything like that. It's designed to help you become the best version of yourself. So if there are places where you're intellectually weak, and we all are, I am. There's places where I have things that I'm good at. I have things that I'm not good at. Well, AI can help me be better at those things that I'm not very good at, especially at the time that I need it, which is fantastic. This idea that you might have, I'm borrowing the Walmart accounting term, but just in time intelligence, that's amazing that we have that. So I'm bullish on the idea that AI will empower people who want to continue working and who want to continue pushing themselves. It's going to be a force multiplier. For people who kind of see AI as this opportunity for all of us to go to the beach and drink our Cokes and hang out and have these machines doing our work for us, I don't see that world coming out anytime soon. But I also don't see the world where we're going to have soup lines and bread lines and those kinds of things, and nobody's going to be able to find a job. I think that there are going to be things that are going to change. So how's it going to change the world of health insurance? Well, a lot of the things that we're used to doing, quoting and those kinds of things, consulting, that is going to become more and more a thing that the back end work of preparing the data, doing the analysis is done. And our job as brokers is to communicate that information. There are certain things that an AI can't do. I can sit down with an employer and say, look, financially, here's the thing that you can do. You can do this, you can do that. I know your employees, and I don't know. I don't know that this is the right decision. I think makes sense on paper, but I think you ought to go with this one. AI is not going to be able to do that. The ability to translate information into meaning so that you can look an employer, eye to eye, because people still want to do business with people. Information can come from anywhere, but being able to know that, okay, this person's looking out for me and they're understanding me, that's going to be the kind of thing that brokers will be doing more of, is kind of translating information to human speak and to human users. I'm belaboring it, so I'll shut up there, but those are the kinds of opportunities and things that I see.
No, I love it. And that's exactly what I think as well, right? It's really here to help people amplify what they can do and maybe turn a small business with limited capabilities into one that can scale without much more need of, manpower, let's say, right? Really just to amplify what it is you're already doing. Now, Eric, for professionals who are considering adopting new technologies such as AI tools or in whatever form, but maybe feel overwhelmed by the options that are coming at them.
Hmm.
What sort of advice would you give to these people?
Yeah, it's actually a question I've been asked a couple of times. I actually give a presentation to NABIP, the organization you mentioned earlier on AI, and that question comes up. The answer is this, is one of the other problems we have in the AI world right now is everybody's noticed that AI is coming at us from every corner, right? And every single product is now an AI product somehow. Overnight, they've, AI candy bars, I mean, it's there's a limit to where AI is going to exist. The answer to the question is this, is we should not be treating AI as a solution in search of a problem. What we should be doing is looking at our businesses and asking the question of, okay, where am I struggling in my business? Where am I wasting time? Where am I getting shrinkage or loss or whatever? In the broker world, that's usually time lost doing tasks that are repetitive and mundane and error prone. I would be looking at those kinds of things and then start asking, and I would actually ask it broader than AI. AI is unfortunately a buzzword as much as it is a real technology. I would be saying, first off, am I looking for automation or am I actually looking for AI? Because those are actually two different things. I'm having a hard time managing my schedule. Well, Calendly is a tool that would help you manage your schedule. That's an automation tool. And the splitting hairs over the semantics isn't important except to say, that might be what you're looking for. And so if it, you don't need to go into Calendly and say, does it have enough AI for me to do what Calendly will do the job most of the time. You don't, if I have to choose between two tools and one says AI and one says automate your life and make it easier, I don't know that AI is the thing that's going to distinguish whether product A or product B is the one you need. And so that's what I would say. I would say start with your problem, identify where the bottlenecks are, and then try and identify the solutions to that. And then from there, the answer is pretty simple. Start one problem at a time. Don't try and boil the ocean.
Amazing. Very practical. Thank you so much. Eric, one fun question I like to ask the guests. If you could solve one major challenge for Benefit Sculptor today, what would it be?
Being able to achieve all the things that it wants to be given the time and resources that it has. That's, I wish that we had the ability to kind of be the thing that we could show people and say, look, this is what our vision is. That's probably the better answer. I wish we had a better way of communicating to the world what our vision was. And my belief has always been, well, maybe if we can just show enough of the vision, then that could do it. But being able to show the vision, get people to see it and understand it and appreciate it, that's it.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your advice, and for your insight today, Eric. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
For any listeners who might like to connect with you to learn more about Benefit Sculptor or just connect with you, what's the best way to reach out?
A website or LinkedIn. So website is benefitsculptor.com. Sculptor is BENEFITSCULPTOR.com. And then LinkedIn, Erick Cooney. I'm the only Erick Cooney, I think, on LinkedIn. So you'll find me there.
Fantastic. Well, we'll add links to those in the description of the podcast as well. Once again, Eric, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
To the listeners, thank you for tuning into the podcast. As always, I hope this episode has brought you valuable insight, knowledge, and inspiration. If it did, please, would you show your support by dropping us a like on this video and subscribing to the channel. Until next time, we're signing off. And that's a wrap on another episode of The Growth Shift. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether it's a new perspective on failure, a strategy you want to try, or just the reminder that every setback can become a setup for something bigger, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who shift strategically through it. If you're ready to build the systems that help you grow without the chaos, head over to valentix.io. We help businesses like yours scale smarter, not harder. I'm David Zylstra, and I'll see you in the next shift.